Hello, this is Lisa Wade. I'm the Vice President of Sales and Marketing at Galil Motion Control. Today I'm going to be talking about the 21X3 series Ethernet motion controllers with attached drives. The DMC 21X3 series are very high-performance motion controllers that are compact and cost-effective. They are programmed through the Ethernet and RS-232 ports. The controllers are card-level or DIN rail mount controllers, and they're available in 1 through 8 axis. You can see here is the 1 through 4 axis controller, and below here, slightly longer, is the 5 through 8 axis versions of the controller. Now the features of the controller, they do use a 32-bit high-performance microcomputer to handle all the complex and time-intensive tasks of motion control. Those are all handled by the microprocessor that is located on the controller. The controller is available in 1 through 8 axis formats, and you can buy just the number of axes that you need. So if you need just 3 axis, you would specify a 3-axis controller. If you need more than 8 axis, you would specify multiple controllers. Using the microprocessor, the motion controller provides all the modes of motion that you would need, including point-to-point positioning, jogging, linear and circular interpolation for precise vector positioning, electronic gearing, and ECAM. So you can handle any mode of motion using the DMC 21X3. Now the controllers do provide precise closed-loop PID control of servo motors, but the axes can also be configured to control step motors. And you can mix and match different motor types on a single controller. So with a jumper and a software command, you can configure one axis for stepper and another for servo control. The controllers do have non-volatile program memory with multitasking, and then this is going to free your host up from the time-intensive tasks of motion control. So you could download a series of programs in the memory. It's non-volatile, and then we have multitasking, so you can do up to 8 programs can operate at the same time, so you can run different tasks. The controllers do have forward and reverse limit switches for each axis, home inputs, amplifier enable outputs. In addition, there are uncommitted I/O with the controllers, and there is expansion capability, so you can add additional analog and digital I/O to the controllers. As far as communication, you could use the controllers, program them to run standalone, or you can talk to them with a host computer using the Ethernet port, and there's an additional RS-232 port as well. Now, the nice thing about the DMC 21X3 motion controllers is they come with a family of drives, amplifiers, stepper, and servo amplifiers that can connect directly to the 21X3 controllers without a cable. This gives you a nice controller amplifier package with improved connectivity and reduced costs. The controllers operate off plus 5 volts and plus or minus 12 volts, but you can add a DC to DC converter option. You can specify this so that you can operate the cards off a single 18-volt to 72-volt DC input. And the cards are available with card level or DIN rail mounting. So these are the high-performance features available on the 21X3 Ethernet controllers. These multi-axis controllers, the DMC 21X3 is multi-axis. It's available 1 through 8 axes. It's called a centralized controller solution because all the axes are controlled from a single controller. This differs from using a single-axis distributed control network, where, for instance, to handle an 8-axis application, you might network 8 single-axis controllers. The advantage of using this approach is that the multi-axis controllers are typically much more cost-effective than when you purchase separate single-axis controllers. Because they're all on one card, the price per axis would be less. Also, multi-axis controllers, since they perform all the time-intensive tasks of coordinated motion control and coordinating I/O, you don't have to do this task. You don't have to spend time programming this task or having the host computer do this. With single-axis distributed controllers, this would be quite a burden on the host computer, and this is something that you would have to worry about. With the 21X3, all that is handled in the controller. Now, since the DMC 21X3 controllers offer plug-in amplifier options that are multi-axis, you now have a controller-amplifier combination that does reduce the wiring typical of central control systems. Usually when you have a central single-axis motion controller, you would have wires going out to your drives and motors. Now with the controller and the drive packaged together, you definitely minimize the wiring. So the Multiaxis DMC21X3 packaged with amplifiers provides a great alternative to single-axis distributed control systems. Like all Galil controllers, the DMC21X3 is very easy to use. It consists of the Galil programming language, which is upward compatible with all Galil prior generation controllers. So there's two-letter commands. For instance, BG is begin motion, ST is stop motion, SP sets the speed, and so on. There's over 200 commands that you can use to specify motion. And our WSDK Servo Design Kit software provides one-button servo tuning and diagnostics. So you can look at the position versus time, the speed versus time. You can look at the position profiles and see how much overshoot and how stable the system performance is. So this is a very useful tool to set up your servo system using the Galil controller. Now, compared to other Ethernet motion controllers, the DMC21X3 is typically half the price and half the size of box-level controllers. The small size in 1 through 4 axis, the controller is just 4.25 inches by 7 inches. The 5 through 8 axis version is slightly larger at 4.25 inches by 10.75 inches. And they're also quite cost effective. The 8-axis controller is just $995 in quantities of 100. So the price per axis is very cost effective. So you have a control solution that is very cost effective, especially for OEM. The DMC21X3 controller, which we've been talking about, uses a 96-pin DIN connector for each set of 4 axes. This is very low cost, and an advantage of this is it allows direct mounting of interconnect and amplifier boards right to the controller. This eliminates the 100-pin SCSI cable, which is used in some of our other controllers. Now, the little other Optima controllers, such as the DMC1800 PCI bus controller and the DMC2100 Ethernet box-level controllers, actually use the 100-pin high-density SCSI connector. These would require a cable to go between the controller and the interconnect board, called an ICM2900. So if you would like to use the same cable and interconnect, for instance, if you wanted to go from a DMC1800 controller, Galil controller, and convert to an Ethernet solution, and you don't want to change any of your hardware, we do have the 100-pin high-density connector available on the DMC21X2 controllers. So that would be the difference between the 21X2 and the 21X3. Now, if you're starting new with Galil, it's more cost-effective to use the 96-pin DIN because you don't need to have a cable in between the controller and the interconnect. So the part numbers for the controller would be the DMC21X2 would be if you need the 100-pin SCSI, or the 21X3 where you would use the 96-pin. The X would be the number of axes, and as I mentioned, you could buy the controller in 1 through 8 axes. So for example, if you need a 96-pin connector and a 5-axis controller, you'd specify DMC2153, the 5 representing 5 axes. And then you could add a dash DIN for DIN rail mount option, or dash DC24 for 18 volt to 36 volt inputs, or even DC48 for higher voltage inputs. Now the amplifier options that you have, we have several amplifier options, and these are going to make a nice controller drive package. And these amplifiers, they come in 4-axis versions for stepper motors, brush-type servos, and brushless servos. And they attach directly to the motion controller with the 96-pin connector, and notice there's no cable in between, and this greatly reduces the wiring typical of central control systems. So the controller and amplifier combinations reduce the cost and reduce the wiring. This picture right here actually shows the base DMC2143 controller, and attached to that is the FDM20240, which drives 4 stepper motors. So the available options that we have, if you need to use external amplifiers, your own individual amplifiers, with the DMC21X3, we have what's called the ICM20100, And this is a 4-axis interconnect, which has D-type connectors for interface to external drives. Now, if you wanted to use Galil drives, we have drives available, 4-axis drives for step motors, full and half-step motors, and microstepping is available as an option. We have aboard the AMP-20340, which contains 4 20-watt linear amps for driving small brush-type servo motors. And then we have larger amplifiers, a 200-watt, both a 4-axis and a 2-axis version. And then finally we have the 500-watt, 4-axis and 2-axis version. And these amps are configurable for use for both brush and 3-phase brushless motors. And what's nice about the AMP-20540 series is they do have diagnostics and programmability so that you can actually look at the amplifier status through the controller. The amplifiers are priced very cost effectively for OEMs, and you can see for 100 quantity, 4 500-watt drives are $495 each. So this is less than $150 per axis for the amplifiers. Here is an example of a DMC 2183 8-axis controller. It's thin rail mount. Notice there's 2 96-pin connectors. Each one will accept a 4-axis amplifier board. So right here is the stepper mounted the AMP-20340 for driving 4 servo motors, and next to it we have the ICM-20100, which would then be connected to external drives. And you can mix and match the amplifier boards for your application. In addition, if you wanted to get down to individual amplifiers per axis, let's say you had 1 stepper drive on one axis, a 200-watt servo on another axis, we can design custom amplifier boards for a nominal tooling charge. Just contact Galil and let us know your requirements. As I mentioned, the DMC 21X3 motion controller does have forward and reverse limit switches and home switches, as well as inputs and outputs. You can expand the I.O. of this controller in a couple of ways. We have a daughter card that plugs in over here, and you can still use, by the way, the interconnect cards on the 96-pin connector. So here's an example of a DMC 2143 motion controller with an attached daughter board. Here's the daughter board right here. And then also we're attaching the ICM, so you can use both on the card. This daughter board is very small in size, and it's going to give you 40 additional digital I.O. plus 8 uncommitted analog inputs. These have 12-bit analog to digital converter standard, and 16-bit is available as an option. So if you would like to expand the I.O. of your controller to give you an additional 40 digital I.O. and 8 analog inputs, the DB28040 is a cost-effective, real small-sized way to do that. Another way to expand the I.O. of the controller is we have a product called the IOC 7007, and that's an intelligent I.O. controller. It actually contains a microprocessor, and you can expand I.O. by adding separate modules. So the modules sit in a rack, and you can get modules for analog I.O. and for digital I.O. to drive relays, so you can just mix and match the number of modules you need. This board sits on the Ethernet, so it communicates with the controller through the Ethernet net. It's available as a card level, a DIN rail, or even as a box. So you would use the IOC 7007 Intelligent I.O. controller as a way to expand your I.O. As I mentioned, you could add analog I.O., you can add opto-isolated inputs and outputs, and even interface to dry contact relays. This I.O. controller has Ethernet connectivity, and it does have an onboard microprocessor, which will eliminate the need for a separate PLC. And you can actually talk directly from the I.O. controller to the DMC 21X3 over the Ethernet. The advantage of using the IOC with the 21X3 is it uses the same programming language as the 21X3, so you don't have to have a different control language for your PLC and your controller. You can actually use the same language, which is a nice advantage. In summary, the DMC 21X3 controller provides an intelligent, very cost-effective Ethernet control solution. It's full-featured. It uses a 32-bit microprocessor to provide all the high-performance controls you're looking for multi-axis systems. It's small in size, available as card level or DIN rail, and it's also quite cost-effective multi-axis solution. The controller has a 96-pin DIN, which gives you improved connectivity when going to external drives. We do have onboard amplifier solutions that mount right to the controller to give you a controller drive solution that's very cost-effective for multi-axis control systems. If you need more information on this product, look at our website. You can download complete specs at galilmc.com/DMC21X3. Thank you very much for your time.